Hey, welcome back for another episode of Driven by Design, the only show that shows you the future of automotive design. With the man who's been there and back, our driven designer, Bryan Thompson. Hey, Bryan.
Hey, how's it going?
I'm so thrilled at this show. We could
Me
go.
too.
This is such a cool conversation that needs to be had. Who'd you bring with you this time from your little select secret tribe of car designers and people in the design world?
Yeah, so for my very first guest, I brought somebody very special to me, somebody I've worked with for a long time in the car industry. Her name is Jill Canales. I brought Jill in today to kick this off because Jill has the most amazing philosophy, I believe, that combines creative experience with this optimism and open-mindedness. And I believe that's going to be really the spirit of the show. So without further ado, hello, Jill. Welcome to the show.
Hello. It's great to be here.
I'm glad you're here. So tell us a little bit about your background. Give us like the 40,000-foot view of what have you done in the car industry and outside?
Yeah. Well, I had a unique role, a role that most people don't know about in automotive. It's called a color and material designer.
What does that mean?
So as a color and material designer, you're in charge of every material in the vehicle and the color. So the plastics, you're talking the dashboard or the panels, it's the grain or texture, the shade of the hue that it is, the exterior body color, carpet, leather, the headliner, what is above you.
All of that has to be designed. And so it's not, are you picking colors? Are you designing colors? How does that work?
You're actually designing it from, the chemistry of the paint and in creation of something completely new. So we're working with all the different manufacturers. So paint suppliers like BASF, PPG, we're working with 4 or 5 different fabric mills. We're working with carpet companies. And you are, as a color material designer, you're creating the vision, the concept of what this car needs to feel like, because color materials add this sort of layer of this experiential quality that people often don't understand.
Yeah, tell me a bit more about that, because on one hand, it's like, I think if you're hearing this for the first time, you'd be like, oh, that's a decorator. But it's more than that, right? Mm-hmm. What you're sort of alluding to is that it sounds like you're creating the mood of the space, right?
Exactly, yeah.
And what does that mean? Like, how do you understand what the mood of that space is going to be?
Well, it's really understanding that color and materials direct your experience and give you unspoken cues of how to feel in that space. So like a deep, dark, luxe, luxury type of vibe versus, for example, the Xterra yellow. The yellow, I don't know if you know the kind of, it's really iconic at one point.
Saturated yellow,
yep.
Very, almost like a taxi yellow.
Yep, like when you see that color, you're going to think, intuitively, sport, bright, happy, extroverted.
That's a great one to draw on. Did you? Because I think that are you creating that parallel in people's minds, or are you drawing from other industries where they associate yellow being tied to something else, and then that brings it in? That's
a great question, because colors, I think, in their very nature, apart from taxi cab yellow, which I noticed that you said is great. Kind of association that people might have subconsciously, but colors by very nature evoke feelings, because our eye actually takes color in on a physiological level. So like the color blue is calming by nature. Mm-hmm. Red elevates our heart rate.
Oh, wow.
And causes excitement. So there is that very natural understanding of how color materials kind of our experience of them, but then there's also associative aspects as well. Like sports cars are usually red, and we associate those two together.
It's interesting because so you can really affect people's mood or by the actual colors that you're developing. Also, I would imagine that in color and materials, because I know your background, and I want people to understand the breadth of what this is. You've worked on a lot of production cars that people have in their driveways and have had in their driveways. There's sort of a research quality to what you're doing too. It seems like, because you're sort of trying to understand the sensibility of people. And I know you transitioned into research from color, and that's where it led you where you are now.
Right.
Talk a little bit about how you move from color and material into research.
Okay, so that's a great question. So color material is really understanding, for me, has always been about understanding the psychology of experience. And so then that naturally led me into studying people. That's my true passion, is actually studying how we experience things. And that was my role a bit at Nissan, was kind of taking that those product planning documents, all that research done, and so the product planners would turn over this kind of like mandate to the design team, say this is who you're designing for, and this is what it should do. And I know that everyone looks at a document and has their own interpretation of it. And what's important is that we have a shared meaning of what that document means and bring it to life.
And so that's part of what the work that you would do to help people understand the research that had been done. It's almost like research on research.
Right. It's just called design research. And what I would do is then design experiences for the design team to understand those people directly. And yeah.
And so when you're working in two different fields, like color materials and then research, I know that you've had this fascinating career in the car industry, and then you transitioned out of the car industry. Tell me a bit about what it's like to leave sort of the nest of something very identifiable that everybody relates to something maybe no one's heard of. Talk about, what was that like for you?
I know, I didn't understand how special it was until I left, really. Because I fell into automotive design right from college. It was my first job out of school. And
I think so you were a color material designer who had a senior thesis that was black and white.
Right. I studied textile design in school, and I was kind of finding myself and my creative voice. And as part of that journey, my junior year in college, I actually said everything I'll create this year is black and white. I will not use color.
You have two choices.
Yeah. And my professors were really upset with me. They're like, no, this project is mandated to be about color. And I was like, well, I'm paying for this education.
What drove you, as a driven designer, what drove you to go black and white from color? I mean, what did you want to achieve from that?
Oh, at that point, it was all about, I was studying pattern. I was obsessed with pattern. I'm an odd character. I mean, I'm telling you, my favorite shape back then was the square.
So the square spoke to you.
Yeah.
And the pattern spoke to you. So you eliminated color to study color?
Yeah, I eliminated, it was all shades of gray, black, white, shades of gray, because I really just wanted to reduce it to pattern study. Was
so
most
you were
important.
50 Shades of Gray before it was a thing. Jill, so after I do want to hear this story. So after you left sort of the car companies, I think that a lot of people can relate to transitioning out of a job that's familiar to something new. Talk about what that was like when you left and you went into a totally new industry.
Yeah.
What was it like? What happened?
Well, it was interesting. Even though I was in my 30s, my mother was terrified for me. Are you sure you're leaving? Yeah. I mean, it was really, I was at Nissan for 14 years, and it was a dream job. I mean, I traveled the world. I worked with designers in Japan and Europe, and I went to factories in Mexico, and it was just a remarkable experience working with an amazingly talented group of designers. But alas, after 14 years, I had just done all that I could do at that time. And I rode this amazing wave at the design studio, and the wave was kind of like, it was an ebb and flow, and kind of things were shifting, and I just knew I needed other experiences. So
yeah, I remember that period of life. For people that don't know, Jill is fiercely creative, and she's always sort of looking to be inspired, which I think is a neat part of what makes a good designer, is always looking for something new. So if you were at this this very interesting well-defined job, and you go into something totally new, tell us what was your first day on the job after you left?
I left Nissan to go to a startup. So from a multi-billion-dollar global organization, where seemingly unlimited budgets, and this amazing life, I went to this tiny little materials manufacturer in Salt Lake City, designing architectural materials, and it was just me and a team of two. Oh my gosh.
And so you sort of can and have to do everything, it sounds like, in an environment like that.
Yeah, and like every night fires were burning. Like you went home and like you had to show up every single day or the businesses was not going to operate. Right. It's a very different feeling than a global organization.
Yeah, if you're working in a studio where the mantra is, you have a freedom to fail, and you go somewhere out where the failure, you find out what real failure is, and the repercussions. You can't fail. But I think it was interesting that you took on a new role then that you hadn't done. And I think that's as inspiring for listeners, is that you took on a marketing role in addition to your research in color material. You literally went to a materials company, and you had to learn it on the go. Was that scary? Was it fun?
It was so fun.
Yeah.
It was so much fun.
What made it fun?
I was working for a manufacturer. It was a resin. The company's called Freeform, and we made architectural materials resin with materials, decorative elements encapsulated in it.
It's like that material if you're ever like in a hotel lobby, a high-end hotel, or like a doctor's office where it's sort of translucent and there's like natural materials in it, right? Just so people get a visual.
Right.
And so you were developing that.
Right. So I went from a product designer and researcher at Nissan to the head of marketing and product for a startup. So going to a small company allowed me to transition into marketing, and I mean, lucky me, just transition to a vice president position. Yeah, right. When you go small, you can be big.
When they go small, we go big. I like that. When you go small, you can be big. I love that. Yeah. In fact, that's exactly what kind of happened. Is that I think it's inspiring. So people, I think, and I have this myself, sometimes it's scary to go into something that you don't know, because how am I going to do this? I've never done this role. But you didn't have a marketing degree, but you had absorbed a lot of marketing knowledge by working in a very sophisticated marketing environment.
Right. Well, and that's interesting because that's what I always say at Nissan. Being a designer, you have to champion your ideas for 2 to 3 years. You're convincing people to go in a certain direction, to go with what you've created, and you become a marketer. And so then when I shifted into architectural materials, I was actually marketing to architects and designers, commercial architects and designers. So I actually I had sort of been doing that role. I knew how to sell, and I knew how to sell it was basically selling to people like me, people who are specifying materials.
And so you're in a new context, in a new world, in a new role. How do you, as a designer, stay inspired? What keeps you going?
Oh, God, I love learning. It's a learning mindset. Brian, we have this history and this saying that I said it once a long, long time ago. You have to get out there and pretend you know nothing.
It's true. And from that, the inspiration comes, right?
Yeah, I love that. That's very design thinking. That's a way that successful designers are able to do that. They are able to understand their biases and kind of approach things with a blank slate and be able to put themselves in the position of someone else. Now, if I didn't know all that I know and I'm just another person from another perspective, how would it hit me?
Right. And I think that what I'm hearing you say is that it's not really it is pretending you don't know anything, but it's sort of taking the precedent of what you do know in your experience and setting that, which can be a bias, aside and staying open-minded so that you are not walking into a situation going, I know this stuff already.
Yeah.
Because if you do, then you don't learn, right?
Yeah.
That's it's an amazing insight, because I think that it helps people get to a certain phase in their career sometimes where they will constantly reference what they've already done. Right.
And then understand it's really truly listening and truly being open to learn whatever there is to learn.
And with listening comes rejection, I would imagine.
So am I going to be rejected?
No, you already said. When you propose an idea,
right,
and it doesn't find an audience,
right,
and it hits, what is that like for you specifically as a designer? How do you handle that?
Well, I mean, it's if you're creating fine art, then it's super personal to you. But when it's design, it's I like to separate the strategy and the tactics.
Okay.
And that's helpful.
Mean?
So the strategy is, what are we trying to do?
Okay.
What are we trying to create? And so let me reference under something understandable. So a product planner might come up to approach a color that I've designed and say, I don't like it. Okay, so that's very personal.
Right.
So you bring the conversation back to, what is the strategy of this color? What do we want this color, this design to do? Okay, here's the goals.
Yeah.
And here the tactic is what I've chosen to execute it. So then you can start to pick apart, are we off by strategy or are we off by the execution?
Them saying I don't like it might actually be the response you want to hear if they're not in the target audience for that color.
Right. Then we'd say,
well, validation.
Exactly. So you want to clarify, you don't like it, but this minivan mom who's got 5 kids driving around, what would she think of it? What's her view of the world and her view of that product be? And
so that helps you sort of evolve or take that criticism into heart. And this is a really great question for you, because I know that so many of the products you work on are they sell well. I mean, cars you've worked on sell around the world, and the products you've worked on since then. What happens when a product doesn't meet its market? How do you save it? How do you save it? What's next? Because I have that happen all the time.
I know. There's cars I see driving on the road, and I'm like, oh, I think that seemingly was a good idea at the time.
Yeah. And then
it's like a whoops.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What is your most proud moment
in automotive?
in your career?
Oh boy, that's a big one. Proud moment. I mean, I think I have pride in my resiliency of switching from automotive into a new industry, and then recently I've switched into yet another new industry. So taking those, my pride comes from taking my core skills and my core thinking and being able to learn the specifics of a new industry.
Excellent. And right now you're working at a company that does storage for
it's furniture. Yeah,
furniture. What's that been like transitioning from? Because there's some similarities between car design and furniture design.
Oh yeah, I mean it's super fun because right now I work for a product that costs about $2,000 to $3,000, and so for me the similarity is like understanding the psychology.
What is the product? Like, what are you creating?
It's called, the company is, we're changing names, but right now it's called the original Scrapbox, and we're changing it to Create Room. So I'm part of a team right now. I'm leading the rebrand and new product strategy. But basically it's a closed armoire that opens up and becomes an all-in-one craft room.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
cool.
It's fun. And so the connection between automotive and this is that in automotive, I designed the Quest minivan at one point, the color materials, and understanding how women connect with a space and a place of their own that serves a very practical need and a very emotional need. And being understand what moves people to purchase something, a high ticket item from $30,000 vehicle, or, in this case, it's not as relative, but it's a $3,000 furniture piece. And so it's a lot of the same type of work.
And in the same type of work, is it like connecting with people? So in this specific thing, I would think you're connecting with people who are creatives versus people who have a need to move things around.
True. Yep.
Right?
Then that's a fun market. Yeah.
And so how do you find the way in? How do you connect? What is it that you do to make it appeal to those people?
I think it's understanding that while people are buying a product, they're actually buying an experience.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, and it's really, we're kind of done with the age of selling features and benefits and products. We're selling the promise of an experience and a life you will lead with this product.
So in the life you will lead will be a creative one. So it's something about opening up
the joyful time you'll have crafting, or the experiences in a minivan, the experiences of joy you'll have as a mom with your kids when you're on a road trip, or it's all about that.
That's really, I think it's a nice tie into the work that you've done and the work that you're going to do next, which leads me to the question of what is your dream as a creative person who's worked in a lot of industry? What is your dream project? What would you love to work on next? If you could imagine.
I think it's truly just anything that has a big research component and learning about people and the stories of the individuals. I just love that balance of, like, we call it qualitative research versus quantitative. So qualitative is like really understanding the why.
It's a connection.
The connection,
and the emotional connections that people make to the products they buy. Is that what you're talking about? That's fascinating. So that's probably where your career will continue to go, I would imagine. That's amazing. What advice, as we get closer to wrapping up here, what advice would you give a young designer who is thinking about leaving their day job? Let's say it's somebody who's been in an industry and they want to work for themselves, they want to try something new. What advice would you give yourself or them at that moment of desire to move on?
Like, I would say I really do believe in the power of just like opening up and setting your intention about what you want to do. As much as I've worked hard in my life to bring opportunities in my way, as much as I've worked hard, things seem to drop out of the air.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
So interesting. So you're putting the intention out there, but then things show up.
Yeah, really.
Yeah.
I do believe that.
Yeah.
It's really like, just keep working in that direction and believe and don't give up. It will, the universe will connect with you.
Yeah, I like that too. I believe that too. That if you put out there what you love and what you want to do, the work does come, even in the scary moments. But
I know there's scary moments.
yeah. Well, Jill, I'm so grateful you were my first guest. This is a lot of fun, and I look forward to seeing what you do next. Where can people find your work?
My website is Designful. It's DESIGNFUL.studio.
Okay.
Designful.studio.
Jill Canales, thank you so much. I'm Bryan Thompson, and this is Driven by Design.
And how do people find you, Bryan?
Well, people can find me here and also at Bryan.
That's right, each and every week, right here on OC Talk Radio.
OC Talk Radio right here, and also online at Bryan Thompson Design, Bryan with a Y, Bryan with an I. You can spell it wrong, you spell it right, I'll be there. Because I bought all the domains, because my name's so common.
That's awesome.
I know it's terrible when my renewal bill comes up, but I'm also on all social media platforms at Bryan S. Thompson, BryanSThompson. Instagram is my favorite.
Can I ask just one quick question? I'm listening to you two. You obviously have a history. You guys go back. You're laughing. You get along. I can tell you're talking in a shorthand here. We're all trying to take notes. Are there lots of you in this world, or is this a small clan?
Ooh, that's a great question. I think that there are a lot of car designers, but it's a small enough industry that I think you get to know each other in the car industry, and it's an industry that's changing because cars are changing. So people that were specifically car designers before are coming from all different industries. So it's growing, don't you think?
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah.
Well, we look forward to getting to know all of you that much better here on Driven by Design. Thanks for coming by today.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me, Bryan.
Thanks for being had.